Greetings, one and all, back to the Tolkien Center podcast called Exploring Arda. I am your host, Jackson, and so far we've gotten it out of the way that pretty much everything that this podcast is about of exploring Tolkien's works other than Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So, of course, we have introduced ourselves to the Silmarillion, and we've read through a decent amount of chapters now, as this episode will be dedicated to chapter 11, which is called Of the Sun and Moon and the Hiding of Valinor. So it's each chapter has its significance, and we are on chapter 11. I do hope that you guys enjoyed my rantings, pretty much rantings of pretty much Eru Iluvatar and of Melkor, who has become Morgoth at this point. It's pretty much Morgoth, mainly because that's kind of what he was called. Although we will see the name of Melkor still pop up because it's still his first name. So, if anything, I hope that my video version right here, I'll be uploading that to actually my personal account on YouTube, but hopefully if you search up the name Exploring Arda, it will come up with the actual video. I'm not sure if I'll be able to, because I have limited software to include music in the intro and the outro to it, so it might just be just the video. So yeah, I'm still working on it, but I only have a Chromebook, so that's all I have. So it has very limited software to that. So, but with all of that being said, this is going to be the first video format of the book, so I'm still going to be a little back and forth about it, but we're going to see how it goes. If not, for all of the listeners and podcast stuff, it'll just be like a regular episode. So here we go. Chapter 11. It is told that after the flight of Melkor, the Valar sat long unmoved upon their thrones in the Ring of Doom, but they were not idle, as Fëanor declared in the folly of his heart. For the Valar may work many things with thought rather than with hands, and without voices and silence they may hold counsel with one another. Thus they held vigil in the night of Valinor, and their thought passed back beyond Ea, and forth to the end. Yet neither power nor wisdom assuaged their grief, in the knowing of evil in the hour of its being. And they mourned not for the death of the trees, than for the marring of Fëanor. Of the works of Melkor, one of the most evil. For Fëanor was made the mightiest in all parts of body and mind, in valor, in endurance, in beauty, in understanding, in skill, in strength, and in subtlety alike, of all the children of Iluvatar, and a bright flame was in him. The works of wonder for the glory of Arda, that he might otherwise have wrought only Manwë might in some measure conceive. And it was told by the Vanyar, who held vigil with the Valar, that when the messengers declared to Manwë the answers of Fëanor to his heralds, Manwë wept and bowed his head. But at last that word of Fëanor, that at the least the Noldor should do deeds to live in song forever, he raised his head, as one that hears a voice far off, and said, So shall it be. Dear bought those songs shall be accounted, and yet shall be well bought. For the price could be no other. Thus even as Eru spoke to us, shall beauty not before conceived be brought into Ea, and evil yet be good to have been. But Mondo said, and yet remain evil. To me shall Fëanor come soon. All right, so we get a little summary here. Back to it again. Pretty much, Melkor is back. I guess just like wrecking havoc and stuff. And this is after the whole killing of the trees that we were just talking about and whatnot. And it's pretty much just all bad news for the Valar, and pretty much everything in Valinor is just going downhill. And so they're kind of just in that moment of, I guess, mourning. They're in a stage of mourning, and they're just kind of deciding what to do. And of course, Fëanor is off doing evil deeds himself, and so everything is just bad news, pretty much. So, very short summary there. So let's just get back to it here. But when at last the Valar learned that the Noldor had indeed passed out of Aman and were come back into Middle-earth, they arose and began to set forth in deeds those counsels which they had taken in thoughts for the redress of the evils of Melkor. Then Manwë bade Yavanna and Nienna to put forth all their powers of growth and healing, and they put forth all their powers upon the trees. But the tears of Nienna availed not to heal their mortal wounds, and for a long while Yavanna sat alone in the shadows. Yet even as hope failed and her song faltered, Telperion bore at last upon a leafless bough one great flower of silver, and Laurelin a single fruit of gold. These Yavanna took, and then the trees died, and their lifeless stems stand yet in Valinor, a memorial of vanished joy. But the flower and the fruit Yavanna gave to Aule, and Manwe hollowed them, and Aule and his people made vessels to hold them, and preserve their radiance, that's tough. Hold on. As is said, there you go, in the Narsillion, the song of the sun and moon. Oof, sorry guys, that was a rough sentence for me. These vessels the Valar gave to Varda, that they might become lamps of heaven, outshining the ancient stars, being near to Arda. And she gave them power to traverse the lower regions of Ilmen, and set them to voyage upon appointed courses above the girdle of the earth, from the west unto the east, and to return. So they're pretty much trying to gather whatever they have left, like pretty much remnants of the trees, and at the very last moment, Telperion actually. Actually, they both do. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, Telperion was the flower, and Laurelin was the fruit of gold. So at the very last moment, they both have something that they produce, and the Valar are like, well, we got to save this because it's has the last holy light in a way. So of course they trap it in there and make it lamps. So makes sense, I guess. The Valar, they want to preserve anything that they can. So back to it here. These things the Valar did, recalling in their twilight the darkness of the lands of Arda, and they resolved now to illumine Middle-earth, and with light to hinder the deeds of Melkor. For they remembered the Avari that remained by the waters of their awakening, and they did not utterly forsake the Noldor in exile. And Manwe knew also that the hour of the coming of men was drawn nigh. And it is said indeed that even as the Valar made war upon Melkor for the sake of the Quendi, so now for that time they forbore for the sake of the Hildor, the aftercomers, the younger children of Iluvatar. For so grievous had been the hurts of Middle-earth in the war upon Autumno, that the Valar feared lest lest even worse should now befall, whereas the Hildor should be mortal and weaker than the Quendi to withstand fear and tumult. Moreover, it was not revealed to Manwe where the beginning of men should be, north, south, or east. Therefore the Valar sent forth light, but made strong the land of their dwelling. Isil the Sheen, the Vanyar of old, named the moon, flower of Telperion and Valinor, and Anar, the fire-golden fruit of Laurelin, they named the sun. But the Noldor named them also Rana, the wayward, and Vasa, the heart of fire, that awakens and consumes. For the sun was set as a sign for the awakening of men and the waning of the elves, but the moon cherishes their memory. Actually, you know what? I'll stop there. Sorry, guys. All right, so I just really like this, that the sun and the moon are obviously a very permanent thing in the world. And this sort of origin, I guess you could say an origin of the sun and moon itself, is really cool. I just really like how it pretty much takes the last seeds of Telperion and Laurelin, and then they just put it in the sky, and they're like, yeah, that's the sun and the moon. At least that's kind of what, that's what Varda is, yes. And that's why Elbereth is all, it's the Lady of the Stars and whatnot, and the purity and yeah, all that stuff, which is super cool. I really like that. That's the origin of the moon and the sun, and then it came from the earth. I just really like that for some reason. Just something that's very seems distant and far away actually came from something that's almost close to the heart, especially for the Valar, because it was all from destruction, really. They took something that was from destruction and they put it into the sky, and now it's like forever there, and it keeps memory, I think. Oh yeah, the moon cherishes the memory. And that's really cool. Just something about it. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it in words right now. So let's just go back to the story. The maiden whom the Valar chose from among the Maiar to guide the vessel of the sun was named Arion, and he that steered the island of the moon was Tilion. In the days of the trees, Arion had tended the golden flowers in the gardens of Vana, and watered them with the bright dews of Laurelin. But Tilion was a hunter of the company of Orome, and he had a silver bow. He was a lover of silver, and when he would rest he forsook the woods of Orome, and going into Lorien he lay in dream by the pools of Este, until Perion's flickering beams, and he begged to be given the task of tending forever the last flower of silver. Arion the maiden was mightier than he, and she was chosen because she had not feared the heats of Laurelin, and was unhurt by them, being from the beginning a spirit of fire, whom Melkor had not deceived, nor drawn to his service. Too bright were the eyes of Arion for even the Eldar to look upon, and leaving Valinor, she forsook the form and raiment which, like the valor she had worn there, and she was as a naked flame, terrible in the fullness of her splendor. Yeah, so that's actually really cool too. I actually kind of, I feel really bad, but I actually kind of forgot about Arion and Tilion actually, just because it seems like they're a very passing character. I suppose this is a really good reason why I wanted to go back into the Silmarillion, because of moments like this where I totally missed these characters and their significance. It's literally them guiding the sun and the moon to where they're supposed to be, and pretty much keeping them safe. They're kind of like guards for them. And the whole thing of Arion literally being a spirit of fire. Super cool. I love that. And that she, even though she's a spirit of fire, she still denied Melkor, and she's still there, obviously. So she has to be some sort of, she has to be powerful enough to really actually like defy Melkor as a spirit of fire. Just really like that. Back to here. Isil was first wrought and made ready, and first rose into the realm of the stars, and was the elder of the new lights, as was Telperion of the trees. Then for a while the world had moonlight, and many things stirred and awoke that had awaited long in the sleep of Yavanna. The servants of Morgoth were filled with amazement, but the elves of the outer lands looked up in delight. And even as the moon rose above the darkness in the west, Fingolfin let blow his silver trumpets and began his march into Middle-earth, and the shadows of his host went long and black before them. Tilion had traversed the heavens 7 times, and thus was in the furthest east when the vessel of Arion was made ready. Then Anar arose in glory, and the first dawn of the sun was like a great fire upon the towers of the Pelori. The clouds of Middle-earth were kindled, and there was heard the sound of many waterfalls. Then indeed Morgoth was dismayed, and he descended into the uttermost depths of Angband, and withdrew his servants, sending forth great reek and dark cloud to hide his land from the light of the day star. Awesome, really cool. I love it. Yeah, pretty much we get the whole rising, the first risings of the sun and the moon. And of course, with the moon, it can go both ways because, first of all, like the elves are amazed with anything that's set upon Arda, I suppose. Anything that, I guess, anything that the Valar really gives them, they appreciate greatly. But of course, since it's the moon and it's nighttime, same thing with Morgoth and his little minions, is that they appreciate it as well, and they're amazed with it. But when the sun comes, then they're all scared away and they go back into Angband, and then everybody else rejoices because it is the sun and it's daytime and light, and obviously, light versus dark, and that pretty much all comes together for a full circle, I guess. So that was kind of pretty cool. Back to it here. Now Varda purposed that the 2 vessels should journey in Ilmen and ever be aloft, but not together. Each should pass from Valinor into the east and return, the one issuing from the west as the other turned from the east. Thus the first of the new days were reckoned, after the manner of the trees, from the mingling of the lights when Arion and Tilion passed in their courses, above the middle of the earth. But Tilion was wayward and uncertain in speed, and held not to his appointed path, and he sought to come near to Arion, being drawn by her splendor, though the flame of Anar scorched him, and the island of the moon was darkened. Because of the waywardness of Tilion, therefore, and yet more because of the prayers of Lorien and Este, who said that sleep and rest had been banished from the earth, and the stars were hidden, Varda changed her counsel and allowed a time wherein the world should still have shadow and half-life. Anar rested therefore a while in Valinor, lying upon the cool bosom of the outer sea. And evening, the time of the descent and resting of the sun, was the hour of greatest light and joy in Amen. But soon the sun was drawn down by the servants of Ulmo, and went then in haste under the earth, and so came unseen to the east, and there mounted heaven again, lest night be overlong and evil walk under the moon. But by Anar the waters of the outer sea were made hot and glowed with colored fire, and Valinor had light for a while after the passing of Arion. Yet, as she journeyed under the earth and drew towards the east, the glow faded and Valinor was dim, and the Valar mourned then most for the death of Laurelin. At dawn, the shadows of the mountains of defense lay heavy on the blessed realm. I think for this little segment here, um, he pretty much just talks about the whole day and night cycle, but the only thing why there is sometimes like the moon is still out there while it's still daytime is that Tilion was pretty much, I'm not really reckless, but he just did what he wanted to. He was that's the thing, he wasn't really selfish. What? Pretty much waywardness. There you go. Yeah. So he pretty much does his own thing, and he gets too fast, maybe, and that's why there's so much sun out there. Um, and then he talks about having the sunset and whatnot, and it was hasteful, and I just think it was a very fancy way of a fancy one and a very fantastical way of explaining day and night cycles and seasons. Maybe I don't know. Very interesting that like these two figures are the ones that are just almost racing each other, or like Tilion is trying to meet up with Arion. Yeah, there you go. I almost forgot the name. See, there you go. That's why I read this. He's trying to meet up with her, but like they're so far away, and it never happens. So yeah, just cool. It's cool to learn. All right, back to it here. Varda commanded the moon to journey in like manner, and passing under earth. I lost my place there. Sorry. And passing under earth to arise in the east, but only after the sun had descended from heaven. But Tilion went with uncertain pace. As yet he goes, and was still drawn towards Arion, as he ever shall be. So often both may be seen above the earth together, or at times it will chance that he comes so nigh that his shadow cuts off her brightness, and there is a darkness amid the day. There you go. That's what I was talking about. I had one paragraph left to read. That's what I was talking about. The whole thing of him being swift. All right, back to it here. Therefore, by the coming and going of Anar the Valar, of the going of Anar, the Valar reckoned the days thereafter until the change of the world. For Tilion tarried seldom in Valinor, but more often would pass swiftly over the western land, over Avathar or Aramin or Valinor, and plunge in the chasm beyond the outer sea, pursuing his way alone amid the grots and caverns at the roots of Arda. There he would often wander long, and late would return. Still, therefore, after the long night, the light of Valinor was greater and fairer than upon Middle Earth. For the sun rested there, and the lights of heaven drew nearer to earth in that region. But neither the sun nor the moon can recall the light that was of old, that came from the trees before they were touched by the poison of Ungoliant. That light lives now in the Silmarils alone. But Morgoth hated the new lights, and was for a while confounded by this unlooked for stroke of the Valar. Then he assailed Tilion, sending spirits of shadow against him, and there was strife in Ilmen beneath the pass of the stars. But Tilion was victorious, and Arion Morgoth feared with a great fear, but dared not come nigh her, having indeed no longer the power. For as he grew in malice, and sent forth from himself the evil that he conceived in lives and creatures of wickedness, his might passed into them and was dispersed. And he himself became ever more bound to the earth, unwilling to issue from his dark strongholds. With shadows he hid himself and his servants from Arion, the glance of whose eyes they could not long endure. And the lands near his dwelling were shrouded in fumes and great clouds. Alright, cool. So, Morgoth is pretty much, he does not like either of them, either the sun or the moon, but he especially does not like Tilion because of obviously the light and whatnot. So it would only make sense that he goes after him, but I mean they're powerful enough to, I guess stop Morgoth, which is interesting because even as he goes, he like actually well. At the same time, Morgoth doesn't really go and fight Tilion himself, which is interesting. I thought like if he would actually want him out of the picture, that he would do it himself. But apparently he's just obviously bound to the earth itself. I guess he just realizes that when he sends out those shadows, like the shadow spirits, figures that they go after Tilion. I guess he just has that moment of recognition that he's just forever going to be bound to the fate of Arda, which, that's probably why he just pushes things just even more as the book progresses, because he just realizes he's stuck there. That's his torture, pretty much. So, yeah, just another interesting thing to know. So we got one page left, guys. So we're almost done with this episode. Figured it would be kind of short, but we'll finish it here. But seeing the assault upon Tilion, the Valar were in doubt, fearing what the malice and cunning of Morgoth might yet contrive against them. Being unwilling to make war upon him in Middle-earth, they remembered none the less the ruin of Almarin, and they resolved that the like should not befall Valinor. Therefore at that time they fortified their land anew, and they raised up the mountain walls of the Pelori to sheer and dreadful heights, east, north, and south. Their outer sides were dark and smooth, without foothold or ledge, and they fell in great precipices, with faces hard as glass, and rose up to towers with crowns of white ice. A sleepless watch was set upon them, and no pass led through them, save only at the Calakiria. But that pass the Valar did not close, because of the Eldar that were faithful. And in the city of Tirion, upon the green hill, Finarfin yet ruled the remnant of the Noldor in the deep cleft of the mountains. For all those of elven race, even the Vanyar and Ingwe their lord, must breathe at times the outer air and the wind that comes over the sea from the lands of their birth. And the Valar would not sunder the Teleri wholly from their kin. But in the Calakiria they set strong towers and many sentinels, and at this issue upon the plains of Valimar a host was encamped, so that neither bird nor beast nor elf nor man nor any creature beside that dwelt in Middle-earth could pass that leaguer. And in that time also, which song is called, oh boy, Nertale Valinoreva, the hiding of Valinor, the enchanted isles were set, and all the seas about them were filled with shadows and bewilderment. And these isles were strung as a net in the shadowy seas from the north to the south, before Tol Eressëa, the lonely isle, is reached by one sailing west. Hardly might any vessel pass between them, for it is the danger sounds the waves side forever upon dark rocks, shrouded in mist. And in the twilight a great weariness came upon mariners and a loathing of the sea. But all that ever set foot upon the islands were there entrapped, and slept until the change of the world. Thus it was that as Mandos foretold to them in Eremin the blessed realm was shut against the Noldor. And of the many messengers that in after days sailed into the west, none came ever to Valinor, save one only, the mightiest mariner of song. All right, so that is like the end of the first. Wow, that is the end of the 11th chapter. There, I don't know why I said first. Yeah, so we got that there. Pretty much to summarize that, is that the Valar become very worried about what Morgoth still has in mind and what he can do, because it's very dangerous and scary, that they decide to raise the Pelori to the point where nothing can get through except for like one little passageway for the remnant of the Noldor to just actually go out and pretty much breathe the air that they were formed from. I guess it's in a way not in a way they get homesick, but the remnant of the Noldor is still their home, like where they are right now with Finarfin. But they still, I guess, just have that all those memories of where they were before. So I guess it makes sense. And actually, the really cool thing is that where was it? Yeah, the Enchanted Isles was really cool. It's a really cool way actually to hide an island, or at least hide the way to get to there, is to pretty much just have a whole like bundle of I don't know how to say it, like a whole bunch of islands just strewn across the ocean, and if people do get to it, they're trapped there. They don't even get through. So they pretty much make it impossible for anybody to go into Valinor, like physically, because anything after that is just death, and that's where you go to the halls of Mandos, because obviously that's the Undying Lands, and Mandos is the whole Hall of Doom and whatnot. And so yeah, and that's pretty much how the chapter ends, is that the Valar are in fear of Morgoth once again. So, yeah. Hopefully that you guys like my continued narration. If I even have listeners or views at this point, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. Right now, I'm still at the very, very first part of this humongous project, and I'm still working out the little details because I have very limited materials and software and stuff like that, as I said before. But I will still work on trying to get everything else just to be better, because I really love this project. As I continue each recording session, I really enjoy this. So, if anything, just let other people know about this podcast. It would be amazing, and I would appreciate it very much. So, with that all being said, just stay tuned for the next episode, and may the light of Elbereth be with you all. Farewell!